So uncomfortable conversations. I think sometimes I have more of those things than I would like, but I've kind of learned a little bit about it. I think it's an important thing. So I volunteered for it, and I'm glad to do it. It's a very interesting subject because you don't. It seems like in scouting you have lots and lots of opportunities to have conversations, but sometimes they can turn to be uncomfortable for one reason or another. But we just talk about let's open it up. What are some of the reasons why a conversation might become uncomfortable with somebody in scouting? Anybody want to make a comment? Yes, sir.
So they're doing something that would be against scouting policy. And so you've got to talk about a corrective behavior.
Right.
And so there's got to be something that's got to change with what happened. It's not correct. So you want to get it from being not correct to correct. That could sometimes be difficult.
Right.
Because you're going to say, you're doing it wrong. Let's do it right.
But the leader is doing it wrong, but he feels like he's doing some really good things, and it's just easier that way. So those are the kinds of things that can really cause being a little bit uncomfortable. So at the end of this course, this is kind of things that we're trying to accomplish: being able to analyze conflict, identify tools to help navigate difficult conversation, and learn to apply tools to specific situations. Analyzing conflict. So you've got a situation where you've got a little bit of an issue or question. How do you go forward? What do you want to try to accomplish? So if you have a conversation or a conflict or something like we were talking about, where do you start? What do you guys feel like? What's the best thing that we can do to accomplish a resolution, or even know where the resolution is?
You start by telling them the things they are doing.
Yes, exactly right.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
What they are doing is correct.
You've got to work from a point of common ground where the things they're doing correctly, things that are going right. You can't ever approach it as a confrontational. As soon as the confrontation starts, the conversation stops. It's not a conversation anymore. And so I think if you approach it from that way, then they're more open to it. I like the question up here: when are people more likely to do what you ask them to do? Well, not when you're confronting them. The hackles are up and we stop. And so when we want to have that common ground and help them, coach them. I know we're going to talk this later, but coach them and help them to see the problem and arrive at that situation, arrive at the conclusion we'd like them to arrive on their own.
Yes. Yes. So if you have a group of people, or if you're talking to somebody, I think it's also very important that you understand where they're coming from.
You got to listen. Exactly.
You got to listen to them. You got to understand, and even if you have several people that are having some conflict, sometimes just because you have difference of opinion or difference of value, difference of background, difference of what's the word I want to use? Difference of being committed to what you're doing and to the program. So if you're analyzing something, if they're coming together and you've got a problem, you get them to talk about what they have. what their opinion is or what they're dealing with. Another thing to be considering, is what you want to accomplish. What is, what needs to be accomplished, and then if you define what they're talking about, what their concerns are, and then as you're talking to them, you can better understand or make a decision or a statement about what they may have concerns about. Then you can start solving problems together and come up with a resolution that will work. So those are just kind of some of the tools to mitigate a problem. It's just by having something that you work on together. So when you're dealing, I told you I'd be taking this foot off. When you're dealing with conflict or situations that are difficult, I think sometimes we don't realize some things can feel like a small thing to us, and it's a real big and important thing to them. So we need to realize that stakes here can be high. What are we dealing with? Why in a scouting situations would the stakes be high?
Well, the stakes run high because we don't take care of the conflict. And then the program suffers. Those involved in the program suffer, and you could have division and then abandonment.
Right. So the program could have some really significant problems if you have a leader that's, as you were mentioned earlier, a leader that's not doing things the way they should be. But another leader says, well, he's pointing it out, or she's pointing it out. Somebody else is saying, well, maybe it's not that big a deal, or whatever. If you have conflict, you can't have success, right?
Right, you don't have success. And it's interesting. It says opinions vary, emotions run strong. Opinions are not fact. Emotions are subjective. And as I look at those things, it's like, we all have our own opinions of different things. And our emotions are there. And those are something that you can't nail down to one degree that this is right, this is wrong, because it's a person's opinion.
That is correct. But to them, it's the most important thing.
Right, it is. And so that's where you gotta, it's difficult in trying to say, okay, what is real?
Yeah, or that's not, you don't want to come up to them and say that something that's just really important to them, that's not a big deal.
Because
to them, that's what their perception is reality.
Yeah.
So sometimes as we're talking about a conflict, the end result a lot of times can come to a situation where you can make a decision, and it just kind of falls into place. That you make the decision and you work it out because you've had a chance to talk about it a little bit. Other times, that's not going to happen. I mean, many times everybody can't come to a point where they totally agree. But sometimes words I want to say. Sometimes people can give and take a little bit. Some can compromise and say, well, maybe we can do it this way, and that can help us solve the problem. So what could go wrong as we do it? Here's a visual on some of the things that we were just talking about. So if somebody's just gonna be focused on winning, is that gonna solve the problem?
No, because that sometimes, you know, you have the winner, you have the loser.
Right, and usually you have one winner and several losers, right? Go ahead.
You gotta compromise so you can have both winners on both sides of the story.
A win is the situation.
Win-win, yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
So, or if somebody goes to the point where they're becoming aggressive or blowing things out of proportion, that can still, is that gonna help anything?
That's also a point of bullying.
Yeah,
And in Scouts, we don't agree with that, or peers or anyone else.
right. So are you going to be able to have a resolution if you've got that kind of behavior?
Most likely not, because usually once we blow up, it's like it's over and he's got to calm down to where you can say, okay,
Right.
we can work together. And, okay, let's get back and say, what is the problem? What's the cause of the problem? And what's the solution?
And a lot of times if people feel like they're being heard, it's a lot easier to solve a problem. And we may not have a bully or aggressive or whatever happens because they feel like, hey, they've been heard. Now let's see if we can get together and come to a resolution that works for everybody, even though it may not be everybody's perfect. In fact, generally, if you have something and one person gets it all, probably a lot of people that didn't get very much, and they're not happy. What's poor body language? I do that a lot. But it's not because I'm climbing up, it's just where my natural, but I think that there is, and you can
Well,
see. it
usually poor body language is,
Yeah, you can't see his eyes, but they're
Oh,
almost
looks could kill.
closed. What's that?
If looks could kill. Sometimes, you
Yeah.
know, someone gives you.
Or what about pointing fingers? Yeah. Yeah, that could be really,
If you're gonna talk with open hands instead of you,
right.
it's us, we,
So what, on the other hand, what is good body language? Looking somebody in the eye,
sitting up straight.
sitting up straight.
Hey, you can showing that you're paying attention and that you're concerned, even leaning in a little bit. Makes a big difference in what you, and make sure that you're making contact and that your eyes and your body are telling them you're hearing what they say.
You know, you talk about the poor body language. I had a student who was like this the other day in one of my classes. I thought, seriously, and I thought, and I'm thinking to myself, so you're totally disengaged in this class. I mean, you're showing no respect, no nothing. You know, it's just totally unrespectful to have your feet up on the table and just pay back. It's like, student dropped the class, but I just thought, you're not in here for the right reasons.
Yeah, and it
You're
may
not
not,
engaged in the right
it may
way.
not be that totally. You know, he may be engaged, but he's surely not showing it that he is.
Well,
Yeah,
but communication goes two ways.
Yeah.
So what he's communicating, he may be listening, he may be absorbing, but what he's just communicated back to the teacher is I don't care.
Right.
I'm,
Yeah.
I dare you to teach me.
already know this. Already know this. What they're talking about. That's the comments that some people have is you already know what's going on, so why do I need to participate?
So if you've got a situation, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Having special needs scouts, one issue I have learned is you may get used to having them look at you when you talk, and they're looking off somewhere else, but they're listening to you. And it could be also knowing how the person is going to receive you or how the person actually receives information.
Right, and sometimes, like he was folding his arms and kind of leaning back and
My eyes went down.
eyes went down. That doesn't necessarily, I think that becomes part of reading people and reading what,
Yeah.
maybe some other things that you know, if you're concerned about.
But when you recognize though, so that's why it's important to know the other people.
Right.
And know how they are.
Yeah.
One of our scouts, that's in our troop is special needs, and he comes to us because he can get transportation to us. And he's part of his, I think he's legally blind, but he can see enough to get around. And when he talks to you, he has to turn his head a little bit to the side. It's almost like to see you, he has to look sideways to see you. And so that's why it's important when you're taking the opportunity to have that difficult conversation with somebody, that you've done your homework, that you know where and how that person comes. And that they know that conversation is coming from a point of you caring about them, not the other way. Just like in the presentations we've seen, and we've heard it a lot of times, criticism, as a feedback, as a gift.
Yeah, 'cause that's a lot of idea with the voices, to realize you gotta slow down instructions because of how they're perceiving it. And when we first started our troop, it was like, I gotta learn each individual trades. And after about 3 months, it was no big deal. I knew how to help each one.
So you have, so you have to be aware, and these body signals and things that we've been talking about. One moment, please. And then I think they can be some general things, but we still have to make sure that we're making an accurate reading. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, with body language, if you're all the way in the corner of a room, for example, that's probably a sign that they're being bullied.
Oh, yeah. So, and you may want to look at a lot of the different things besides just that one thing. But keep in mind, be aware, and oh, wow, I wonder if there's something we need to do here. Because nobody's going to learn very much if we're being bullied. So ask yourself these questions. As you go into a situation, what do you really want for yourself out of it? What do you really want for others? Because I think that would be different. But what does the other person need? What do you really want for the relationship? You want to continue the relationship. You want to build the relationship. Are you okay if the relationship goes away? I think all of those things are really important as you try to analyze and get ready for the conversation. And how would you behave if you really wanted these results? So that might help as you're going into and preparing for a meeting. So we talked about this a little bit. State your purpose. Don't let emotions cloud the facts. I think you said something about emotions, but don't, sometimes you can be all upset and not really able to see what the actual facts are. Make it comfortable for the other person. I think that's really important. If you're not comfortable, you just really can't get things done. Go ahead.
I have always said, personally, I've said, you can tell me anything if you say it nicely.
Yeah. I think I'm the same way. If I'm feeling like I'm being aggressive toward me or whatever.
Talk with instead of down.
Yeah, even to talk with.
Yeah.
Start off. The most important thing is start off where the other person is coming from. What's caused this problem? Why? Are you trained? Are you doing this thing that may not be the right thing just because it's easy? How can we solve? ask questions, stay calm. Sometimes that can be really tough, especially if you're heavily invested in it and you think the other person might be heavily invested in it, even though it may need to change. Pay attention to your words and your zone, your tone. Pay attention. Think about it. Sometimes that's hard to do because you're trying to think about answers and think about directions. And sometimes the tone can get wrong, but it's really, really important to be aware of how you're coming across.
I was gonna say, I'm a scoutmaster to a special needs troop, and I've got ages from 12 to 80. And
That is so cool.
that
is awesome.
It's amazing when you pay attention to the words. Yeah, each one is different age, but their thinking is about the same. So you use the words that they understand instead of big words where they don't understand what that word means, but simplify. And then the tone is excitement, but also calm, so they understand that they can do these things.
Yeah. Or somebody that's new to scouting. And you don't want to use all the scouting terms because they wouldn't even understand what you're even talking about. Use calming language. I think we talked about that a little bit. Can you tell me some examples of calming language?
Please
Thank you.
please tell me again what that means.
Yeah, I'm not really getting it. Can you?
I mean, they're calming, because if you're in a situation of teaching something in a scout troop or in a meeting or something, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Please tell me what you're talking in a more simpler terms so I understand. And that's a more calming way to get that definition, that understanding of that person that might not know what you're talking about,
Right.
when they ask, please educate me so I understand what you're talking about. When you're using scouting terms, yeah, it's
But that question could come across as, depending on how it's presented,
Yeah.
could come across as totally different. What in the world are you talking about? Yeah.
I think the word help me to understand. Help me to solve this problem. Help me, I think it's been mentioned before, but I think that's a great, when you ask somebody to help you, it's always a compliment. That usually is, that's a good thing, is people like to be accepted. That means that you're accepting of them. Help me.
So a tool that we can use as we're trying to get ready or analyze or even in the middle of a conversation would be to express. So everybody gets a chance to express where they are. I mentioned that earlier a little bit, but everybody gets a chance to express their feelings, their desires. You're having a big meeting and you try to overcome an issue or whatever. It's important that people have an opportunity to express where they're coming from and what they see as the problem. The next one in the ear. I think it's important about this ear part too, though, is what happens when you use your ears. You listen. And I think that's a big part of the whole thing, is just to listen. So if you after you've had a chance to hear everybody's feelings, and what the issues are, then I think it's important to be able to find some way to put that all together and see if there's a problem that can be solved. One thing that you can talk about that would solve and help the issue. If you try to solve 100 things or even 5 things or even 3 things at one time, you don't make any progress, because you don't even know which one we're talking about now.
I think one of the places that I've seen in that effective communication, which is really, really deals a lot with that, is the understanding. And sometimes I can remember having a conversation with our Cub Master recently and talking about what we're doing with the scouts. So she was there as a mother, at that point, she was there beginning because of the Cub Master. She was hearing this, I was saying this. And I had to take a minute and I had to look her right in the eye, and I could see she wasn't comprehending this to this. And I had to figure out an analogy that would put it here so that you make sure that you are being heard. And I apologize that I wasn't communicating to her the way she needed to hear it. And explaining it well enough.
Yeah, so you're on the same page. You're trying to, now you're looking at a problem together, one problem, not a dozen,
And that you're both on the same problem.
on the same problem, yeah. And then many times a resolution will come up. You know, it'll just happen. Sometimes you have to negotiate it. Sometimes you have to say, well, I just can't do that, or well, I have my time, or whatever, and maybe there's some ways that we can find a resolution to the issue. So the ear, and I think that's taught in one of the youth NYLT. I think I talk about that. Has anybody heard or seen something like this presentation? I've seen it dozens of times, and I think it's really good. It's talking about personalities, and when you're dealing with difficult situations, if you know the type of personality that a person has, you can deal with it in a better way, just because you know who you're dealing with. And I think this first thing about it is we're looking about somebody that's outgoing is the top two, and somebody that's more reserved is the bottom two, and then there's a task oriented, and then people oriented. And I don't think we should try to pigeonhole people either, because that's not going to work. Most people have some of these personalities, or most people have some of all of those personalities, in their personality, but generally they're more dominant in one than the other. And I think sometimes it can even change. It can change as a person ages. It can also change as from one situation to another, depending on what their situation is. But generally, a D personality is the type of person that if he's in front of an elevator, keeps pushing the button, hoping that he can get the elevator to come faster. He's somebody that's a dominant, results oriented. I see that sometimes at stoplights. I'll see somebody just keep pushing. I don't know what they're thinking they're accomplishing once you push it. In fact, I've seen people on a computer that the program didn't come up as fast as they wanted to, so they hit it again to get it to come up. Hit it again. They don't realize that every time they hit it again, it starts over. So it's actually. Sorry,
You're not supposed to tell my stories.
Well, we'll see how much time we have. In a minute, I think the stories are great. And personality is an influencer. Enthusiastic, friendly, optimistic. There's somebody that when they get in an elevator, they feel like it's their responsibility to make sure everybody's having a good time. So they're going to start up a conversation. They're going to talk to them. They're going to you know, try to make the, you know, everybody around them feel happy and good. So, and S is steady, has sincerity, patience, is modest. If an S personality is in an elevator and door opens, they're gonna hold the door open and make sure that everybody can get in. And if the elevator is too full, they'll say, oh, no big deal, the door will close, and they'll go up the stairs. So that's kind of an S. Now there's the compliance person. They're the ones that makes lists all the time. I make lists all the time, but I'm not, I don't know. They're the ones that are very concerned about things being compliant. They're cautious. They could be competitive. I have a sister-in-law that's that right there.
I have a grandson that's that, and a granddaughter.
She's so very well read. She's smart. She can get really off in left wing a lot of times, but and she is very competitive. In fact, she said once, you know, I just like making people feel uncomfortable. Okay, and why is that so important to you? Because I don't know. Maybe it's just because she feels like she won. I don't know, but you know, so somebody that said compliance that's in an elevator, they'll see the capacity sign on the inside the car, and then they'll start counting up. And are we going to make it? So that's an S personality. But as you're talking to people, if you can recognize about where they are, I'm not judge them, but sometimes you can better see how they might be motivated. Like a D personality, if you said, and you were talking about going to a meeting, and you said all of the leaders are going to be there, they'll be there. For an I personality, if you said, you know, it's going to be just so fun, you will really enjoy the experience, you know, they'll be there. Yeah, you know, with an S personality, if you said you're going to be able to go and learn how to do a good job and make sure your units are running well and those kinds of things, they'll probably be there. If you go to a compliance, if you said to them, you know, you're going to be able to learn all the ways to make sure things are done right, and you'll be comfortable, and it will be you know, a way to better your troops and make sure that everything is running correctly. No problem. So those are some things that I'm sorry. Those are some things that can help us as we learn and understand how people work and be able to motivate them and so the other thing that is really important in having a difficult conversation is to totally avoid it. Not do it. Find ways that you don't have to do it. Train some, give in one of those things, give early feedback, give clear instructions and expectations. And what does that one cost? What is that one all about? And the start of it, at least, is training. Good training. So if somebody says, well, I've been doing it this way for 15 years, you know, that's good. I'm glad you've been working hard and trying to do the right thing for 15 years. But, you know, that's not the way it should be done. Or work them through how they can find a way to make to comply with the way the scouting organization and better have whatever is causing this problem. Coaching and mentoring, clear boundaries about non-negotiable items. So. We're gonna do a bit of an activity. Who is going to make a report? Okay, ready.
Okay, our scenario is we have a roundtable commissioner that's been in the job for so long that she's taken ownership of the job. But she's not keeping up with the latest updates. And so people are waning at attendance because it's just the same old thing and nothing updated. And so they have a new person they want to put in that role and then put her in to the ADC of commissioner, roundtable commissioners, to give her that chance to excel in a different position. And so our suggestion was to let her know that things need to be updated, but in a way that encourages her to want to improve. Also, help her see a new need. That this roundtable, roundtable commissioners, someplace she can go to help train people below her or to encourage her growth and encourage her to see what the new updates are.
Did you see that update? That was fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, that's encouraging.
So you're gonna keep her on? You're gonna keep her in her position, or you're gonna?
Move her.
No, we're,
Yeah.
in the scenario, we were gonna ask her to become the ADC.
Help her make her decision to make that move.
So the idea is to help her want to make that decision. Okay. All right.
Show her she's needed there and challenge her to.
And give her an award.
Give her an
award, but the challenge would be to start using the technology and get updated.
Right.
It's amazing also that every business, every program, there's always continuous education. Always continuing.
Okay, group two, tell us your scenario and what you decided to do.
So in our scenario, we've got a boy troop and a girl troop chartered by two different churches. But the parents, they have kids to go to both, so they've collaboratively decided we're gonna do stuff together because it's just easier. I can take all my kids to one place and they do their stuff and then they all come home. But some of the boys, they're like, we don't get to do boy things anymore. We have to be with these girls all the time. And you know, kids at that age,
Ooh,
they have a hard time sometimes with the opposite.
that hits
And
home
there.
close. Had that just recently.
And
You don't
so-
want to go to scout camp with the girls.
And so that's kind of what the boys are feeling. The scoutmaster of the one troop, pretty overbearing, and it's my way or the highway, and the other scoutmasters, you know, let's all get along and peacemaker. And that's the situation. So what would we do to solve it? And first off, is we don't know all of the details in this scenario. So listening, coming in and being a good listener, hearing, you know, what do the girls think? The girls have the same problem as the boys. There's as parents, as scoutmasters, who's really making these decisions to kind of get that information. When we have that information, then we can have the conversation with the importance of whether we bring in outside information or help these scoutmasters to see the importance. It's great to do things together, but we mentioned that your separate units, your youth have different needs, and it's important that they address those needs also. Like the girls troop, they need to do girl things sometimes, and it's in the scope of scouting. The boys need to do boys, and doing some things together is great, but all the time you lose that unit identity. You lose that capability to address the needs of your specific group, because then you're trying to do it for everybody, which doesn't work all the time. So I think we settled, we steer them towards a compromise. Let's see, can we help you figure out how to do this, and maybe sometimes do things together, but not all the time. Other times.
Talking to the key three is important.
Yeah,
Make sure that
I agree.
programs are in this troop and what programs in this troop. And if there's anything that can come together maybe once a month, then that's the time to do it, not all the time. It's once a month that they do.
So a couple of questions that I had as you were describing that is, who is running this set of troops? Is it the one leader? Is it the leader that is almost afraid, or, laissez-faire maybe a little bit? The other question I have is it being boy or is it being participant led? Sounds almost like the scoutmasters, or even the parents are leading the troop, and that's great. And if they want to make that decision, let's find them some things to do. But I think we also need to keep in mind the order of things. Who is in charge, and working by committees and solving those things, as a committee, not just by one scoutmaster wants, or 3 or 4 parents. It makes it more.
Well, that's
Great.
as a unit commissioner, part of our responsibility is that if we see that there is a problem with any boy or girl, it's our responsibility to contact the key three. And talk to the key three, okay, here's the issue. Now, let's provide a plan to resolve the issue.
Right.
Against the key three. It shouldn't go to the committee, it should be the key three. Because it's the scoutmaster for one, probably the problem. And the committee chairman is involved, I think there's COR. They're the ones. Yeah, basically. Put together a plan with the scoutmaster on how to resolve issues that you're having. That's the best way to do it. It shouldn't, the parents should never be involved.
Unless they are involved.
Unless they are involved as a leader.
Yeah.
So, and it makes a difference, because I understand what they're saying, because you can have a conflict between a parent and a scoutmaster, even though he may be an assistant scoutmaster, say, for example.
And we're actually getting just even a little beyond the scope of this. The most important thing is that we're having a conversation. Whoever is involved in that conversation, and we're dealing with things, and dealing with them properly, and by the people that should be dealing with them. The scope is that we had a conversation. We used some of the tools we learned today, or probably have learned throughout our lives. But we used those tools to come to a resolution of what was best for this situation. Thank you for your participation
in there.
It's been great to work with you and discuss this.